To vote is one of the nation's most basic and human rights. This year, that right is under attack, as 2/3 of state legislatures have introduced laws challenging the right to vote. New ID requirements and racial bans on ex-felons will wipe out thousands of potential voters off the list, which is why Saturday, December 10th, many are rallying at the United Nations for Stand for Freedom. Here now to discuss a little bit more about this issue and rally further around it is the founder of the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. And Andy, good to have you on the show. Andy King.
Pleasure. Glad to be here this morning.
So honestly, you really feel as though that there's going to be a significant shift in the 2012 elections?
There will be a significant shift. This whole rollback in voting rights across America is designed to make sure that our president doesn't get reelected, and all the progressives that have been voted to make sure that the congressional body that's in support of whatever the president is moving is to make sure they're not reelected come 2012. But what we're looking to do on the 10th is bring awareness to what's happening here in America. And on that day, on Saturday, we'll be meeting in front of the Koch brothers home at their office is down on 61st and 61st for 2nd and marching over to the United Nations. You know, many people go to the United Nations to cry foul of what's happening in Pakistan, what's happening in Libya, but now it's time to call America out because they're doing a real injustice to the people of color throughout this country by trying to repeal voting rights.
For somebody who may not be so familiar with the Koch brothers, I know you're starting out over there at the Koch brothers' place of business residence. Share with us a little bit about the Koch brothers and what you feel they have a part in regards to this.
Well, when it comes to anything that has to do with our president or the progressive bodies that are in Congress, the Koch brothers who are supporting the extremists in regards to the conservatism in this country have funded over millions of dollars to bankroll the Tea Party, and now with this called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, which has been putting laws in place and writing up legislations for elected officials in Congress to pass these laws to repeal voting rights that have been put forward. You say many people don't know who the Koch brothers are, but they are definitely the right-wing extremists that we know that if they continue to do what they do, continue to organize, that they will take away the rights. And voting rights is just the start of passing legislation that will repeal back strides that we've made and accomplished within civil rights also.
You talk about some of the things that are actually plaguing, you know, voters right now and disturbing, if you will, the voters' rights. The fact of identification and having to have photo ID and things of that nature. Why do you have a problem with the photo ID?
Well, what has happened when you come to a photo ID, these laws, when you're talking about over 34 states of actually putting legislation, and in New York is even one, requiring people to have legislation on the table requiring that people have photo ID. The problem with not saying have you have photo IDs is that they're saying that there's been so much fraud because people have taken people's identity and saying that they hoard that they not. But the reality is that you have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than someone actually acting like someone else and going in to vote. And that's been proven. They've done the stats, and it's not a large number of people have ever come in and had that kind of voter registration fraud. But what it will allow, it will eliminate people from voting, having access to voting, because many of our seniors who do not drive or who do not have access to government IDs, now they have to find a way to get an ID, government ID. For some of our students who only usually have student IDs, who may not have government issue IDs, now they are put in a limbo that they might not be able to vote. So now what happens is this turns into somewhat of a poll tax, because in order for you to get an ID, you got to pay to get an ID. Whether you got to pay to get a driver's license, you have to pay to get a passport, or you have to pay to get a birth certificate to prove citizenship to get an ID. So now, here again, that's what the Fifth Amendment and the Voters' Rights of 1965 was to establish, that there would not be any hindrance or anything that would be put in place that would negate any strides in allowing people, especially people of color, to have access to voting.
Now, Democratic leaders are saying that when it comes to the issue of photo ID, it definitely plays a part in reducing the number of people going to the polls, simply because in this last election, President Obama was able to garner a large part of the young population. Do you agree with the Democratic consensus in that area?
I think that there are some misleading facts with that, because what had happened in the 2008 election with President Obama was that you had more young people who were able to vote. Why? Because there was same-day vote registration and vote. There was early voting. All these laws have been also been removed. Also, you had on the table people who have served their time, who had felons committed crimes. They have repealed those laws. Even if you don't owe the states any more time and you're a law-abiding tax-paying citizen, they'll repeal that from you. So now you can't even vote anymore. And in a couple of states, it's permanent. You know, it's not even up for a conversation anymore. So there are a number of different things that they have put in place. Those I just referred to, that's going to determine people when they go to the polls, if they're not paying attention to it, they're going to be very frustrated. And it's a way to organize to change the electorate to make sure that the presidency is not one of a Democratic winner.
So December 10th is going to be the Stand for Freedom March in New York City, and Andy is asking for people to come on out and be a part of this Stand for Freedom March. A little bit more about where people can find out more information about the march.
Well, they can go to the website, which we have is www.stand4freedom.org, or you can text STAND to 62227 to get more information. And we're asking everyone to share it with all your contacts. One of the things that we have forgotten is that everything that we get in this world is political. Whether it's your education, quality health care, your roads, your sanitation, health care, whatever it is, it's all revolved around politics. And we cannot afford to lose the #1 basic vice that gives us power to determine who we put in office, who's going to lead us, protect us, and guide us, and make sure that our rights are never kicked to the side. So I'm asking everyone, please don't disregard this information. Organize yourself, all our community-based organizations, our unions which are on board, anybody who is able, willing, make sure you get down there to meet us on 67th and 2nd Avenue on Saturday to march over to United Nations and make it known that what they're doing is injustice, not just to blacks, but all Americans, because it's going to affect not just the blacks, Latinos, Asians. It's going to some of our Caucasian brothers who are not in the most financial prosperous position also too. So that's the reality that it's going to hit everybody.
So a broad spectrum of people will be gathering on 67th Street and 2nd Avenue. That's taking place on December 10th. It is the Stand for Freedom March in New York City. And Andy King from the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program. And thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us here.
Thank you for having me this morning.
All righty. So we encourage people, come on out and find out more about that. Once again, Stand for Freedom March is December 10th. You can contact Andy King. You saw the information at the bottom of the screen. And you can definitely find out more information about it. And if you want to be a part, go on and be a part of it.